Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the This Fox Rocks event, in which the Inari is added to the game, as well as a bunch of teams for the week, and all the normal stuff. So, of course, with that being said, this week's kind of interesting. We finally, of course, we have a new campaign number 13, and with it, we get a pretty interesting power gem, one that finally allows us to counter 2 times and 3 times in power, which is very convenient because we got Guild War this week, as well as a bunch of other events. But anyways, let's start with the troop, because it is very relevant to this time. It comes with a bunch of yellow purple if you want to go stock up on them, and this is definitely one that you want to go max with it, as it converts all green gems to spirit gems. So on face value, it just looks like a standard converter. Spirit gems are blue, so basically it's just a green to blue in power. Of course, it being in power is pretty relevant. However, what are spirit gems? So of course, aside from them being blue gems, they have a rather interesting mechanic that is potentially somewhat annoying, but also very exceedingly useful. So if we go somewhere, let's go somewhere weak, like Cinema Mirage, and just go show this real quick. So of course, this is the new power gem that's added for this season, and quite a few decent troops end up getting access to this. So what does this do? So it converts greens to spirits, but what spirit actually does is, actually this could be a little bit hard to show because they don't have any mana, but plus the pop-up doesn't show up here. But you've probably seen, if you did in your own game, that a pop-up will come up, and of course, it drains 2 mana for every single one that you end up taking. So this is potentially really good for stopping double empower, triple empower. Very few of them have immune to silence. Back in the day, the way for doing that, and it was kind of fine at the time, with Spirit Fox that's stealthy, so you couldn't target other Spirit Foxes, so you can kind of hold it to counter other empowers. However, this only really worked with the 7 mana drain against 1 empower. The problem these days is, if you ever played Guild War, there's generally 2 empower, and the very ambitious 3 empowers with a single book, or other similar builds. So it is nice to now be able to have an option where we can just counter everything. So if he takes any amount of mana here, we can actually end up showing it. As you can see, he currently has 6 mana, and we'll just end up taking some of the gems, and now you can see he has way less. And what's interesting is this hits full AoE as well. So you see 1, 5, boom. It hits on absolutely every single thing to go and reduce their mana. So it's full AoE every single time. This is very powerful because even one of these is enough to knock something down from having full mana to, of course, not having full mana. So immune to silence. I mean, sorry, not immune to silence, but immune to mana drain. Very, very useful now. Not that it wasn't already, but exceptionally so compared to how it already was. Now that you might even need Curse Stun when you're using like a team like this, just to make sure you end up countering it. But anyways, just wanted to show the gem there. But that is the new gem. Basically, the way to finally counter 2 times, 3 times in power. However, it might be annoying in some other circumstances because, you know, you're going to get mana drained pretty often this season. You're definitely going to have to run like Impervious and other similar parameters to make sure you don't end up getting affected. You can even run Bless, so things that normally don't have immune can have immune for short duration. It's definitely going to be a little bit annoying on the receiving end, but it will finally be able to counter out double and triple empower. So that's going to be pretty cool. And that's one of the main things we got in that regard. With that being said, let's go over the event key drop table. So event key drop table, of course, Magrim Woods this week. As far as, also, that reminds me, does Magrim get another star? Do we not? Hold up. Oh yeah, I forgot. It's 18 blocked. It does technically, but yeah, it's one of those, good old, need to level to 18 and never going to do so anytime soon kingdoms. Anyways, as far as the Magrim Woods drop table is concerned, everything that you see here is available, except for several of them. The main ones to note are Hatter Ascendant is not in drop table, Scroll Reborn is not in drop table, the Moon is not in drop table. As far as where you get these both are both in Soulforge, of course. The Moon is from the Vault Key drop table, and of course the 4 faction troops. So those 7 are not in the drop table. Everything else that you see here is. Is it worth opening event keys this week? Not really, unless you're looking to get like 20 star or something similar on the kingdom. There's like a 50% beast bonus, but it's not used that often. Do you think it kind of would be because, you know, the divine version of it is? But there just isn't too many good beast synergy teams in the current state of the game. This is a good utility troop to at least have a copy of, if nothing else. But overall, a lot of very average options. However, the main relevancy of this kingdom is probably in the fact that we're getting another new kingdom soon that is likely going to be very war gear based. And most other war gears almost exclusively reside in this kingdom, so there might be some synergies with some of the war gears in this kingdom, synergizing with the new kingdom that's going to be coming out very soon. So there is that kind of value there, as this is probably the last Magrim Woods event that you can end up getting these troops prior to the next kingdom coming out. So you might want to stock up just because there might be some synergies with the upcoming kingdom. So there is that aspect, but aside from that, most things here are just average or just very situational utility trips that you would use, like the 50% mana start. So it's a pretty skippable week unless you're just looking to get completion of stuff, getting more stuff for the kingdom, or just want to make sure you have enough options for when a new kingdom comes out, as there might be some war gear synergies here and there. Anyways, as far as other events, we do have a lot of them. Let me start going over the ones that are, of course, the somewhat special ones. Kingdom Pass still going on. If you want to go and complete out, this is the very last week. Of course, we already got them all, though you can, even if you played for the paid side, you do get a few extra rewards, so you can still be doing that every single day. Otherwise, if you're on free side, you're probably at the point where you can just completely ignore it. Or at least once you hit tier 50, you'll be able to. And that's still going on for another week if you still want to complete out this, either to get to tier 50 or just the extra rewards. So there's that still going on. Aside from that, of course, as I mentioned, we do have a brand new campaign, and with it, of course, we do have a lot of brand new drops. Most noteworthy, we have a weapon over here, this thing right here. So as far as the Raven Scepter, ends up creating a bunch of red gems and then converts all reds to spirit gems. The spirit gems, of course, being those blue ones that do mana drain. This is a mechanic that exists on quite a few troops, so if I'm not mistaken, no weapon really has this mechanic, in the sense that they create a bunch of one gem and then converts everything to a different one. While this mechanic does exist several times over, I believe this is the first one Hero has. And of course, you get to do it in Spirit Gem, which is specifically blue mana drain. So that has some potential, as you'll be able to get a gigantic mana drain onto the opposing team. The only really bad thing about this is the weapon itself does not use blue. So unlike some of them that do this option, it doesn't feed mana back to itself. So that's probably its biggest downside. If it ended up doing that, if it was like a purple-blue weapon or something similar, it would be a lot more viable. But unfortunately, it does not, so you're going to have to feed in some other blue troop that then feeds back into your hero if you're going to try to utilize such a mechanic. And aside from that, tarot card, pretty underwhelming, though in all fairness, most tarot cards are. The Emperor, or Empress, last season was one of the few exceptions of an actual good tarot card. But as per usual, they're pretty much all useless, and this is under that category of you're never going to use it. It's basically just for completion's sake to have another star for the kingdom. And as far as the Mythic, it's not bad, it's not good. It explodes all purple gems and spirit gems, which, of course, the spirit gems being those blue special ones. During the season, I guess this will be useful, though you don't get it all the way until the end, so probably not as useful. It really depends what kind of spirit gems options we get or how popular spirit gems are going to be into the future, as it could be potentially very, very popular, given that it can be a 2x, 3x in power counter. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But basically, it's just a full AoE, or sorry, not a full AoE, it's a double tap to last 2 enemies, and then it's boosted by spirit gems. It's a pretty low boost ratio. Realistically, you're probably going to have, like, what, maybe 5 excess spirit gems after you do a convert or something similar, on average at least. And that's only going to be 30 additional damage, and only hitting 2. It's not a particularly high amount of damage. I would say one of the bigger values I end up getting is just the fact that it passively ends up creating spirit gems. So if you have the lead on the enemy, you can kind of just keep a lead on the enemy, especially if you already have some things that have immune to mana drain, which of course it itself does end up having. Oddly enough, it does have Darkstorm at the start of battle. I don't really see the full synergy with that, other than I guess, you know, it does explode purples. But I mean, the kind of teams you'd be using it with don't necessarily want to utilize it that way. But you basically, any team that you end up using this on, the whole premise of this thing is to stay ahead of the enemy team on mana. So you constantly want to be staying ahead of them. You keep just mana draining them off the spirit gems you keep getting. And that's kind of its premise. It seems too slow to bother using in most situations. But it's not a bad premise. It's basically just like a very consistent, just always make sure the enemy team does not have mana. Because, of course, spirit gems, it doesn't matter. As long as they don't have immune to mana drain, it does not matter how much you drain from them. If you drain even 1 mana, and of course spirit gems are 2 mana each time, but even just draining 1 singular mana, that is enough to be the difference between them having full mana and not full mana, which means they still have to take a turn to go and, you know, get back to full mana. So if you're perpetually able to just keep clearing the board, especially if you can clear 2 of them at once, because then Enchant can't even outpace it. Because Enchant does 2 mana per turn, and of course 2 spirit gems would be 4 mana drain. So you can kind of get to a perpetual state where if you have a board clear every turn, to be able to remove your 2 spirit gems that you create, assuming there's 2 blues on the board, which generally there's going to be. But if you just, which is why that would be a little bit better if it's like blue storm than purple. But anyways, but basically, as long as you can clear those 2 blue gems every single board, that's 4 mana drain. So even if they're enchanted, you are still moving them into a state where they went from full mana to not full mana. You can just keep perpetually doing that, especially if you have like Curse on the team to make sure they don't have immune to mana drain or something similar. It has potential. I just feel like it's going to be too slow. It doesn't do enough damage on its ability. Even if this was full AoE, it probably would still be a pretty underwhelming amount of damage. The fact that it's only double tap on last makes it even worse. So its mana accumulation, I guess, makes up for it because it kind of builds into the whole keep clearing board premise. But I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. But it seems too slow for its own good. But the premise is interesting. I really like the whole premise of mana drain gems. It's definitely going to be a guild war option, that's for sure. You're generally not going to be farming summoning like factions with it or something similar, most likely with a lot of these mana drain options. But gosh, if you thought Guild Wars was already annoying, wait till the layer of mana drain comes, especially mana drain with a good curse option. It'd be interesting to see how it pans out, and we're already going to start seeing it as it is. Of course, as far as weekly events are concerned, we have Guild Wars this week. Of course, Guild Wars, all the normal stuff. Make sure to set your defend teams. We're probably going to be revamping them some tonight as well, because we actually got Paragon, so we'll be messing around with that and seeing what we could do. Get some good data on some defend teams. So we do want to tweak some of these. Who knows? Maybe we'll even use that one mana drain troop. We'll see. Probably not. It's more beneficial as the player than the AI, because you know the AI is not going to use it correctly. It is almost guaranteed. But as you can see, of course, a lot of double empowers in Guild Wars. So, if you ever played Guild Wars, you probably already know. But double empower book, very popular. Not the only thing that exists, obviously, but it's a very, very exceedingly popular option. And it's a good way to counter it. So we'll see exactly how that pans out. Of course, currently you can only do that on, what was it, yellow and purple? So it doesn't leave too many options currently as far as days that you can end up countering it on. But of course, we will be getting more Spirit Gems options as the season goes on, so we'll get to see exactly what all the options are by the end of this, but they're definitely going to be primarily Guild War options, that's for sure. Yeah, don't forget, we have Guild Wars going on throughout the week. Aside from that, we have a World Event. World Event's pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, it is Spell Increase and not Spell and Skulls. There's actually quite a few good Skull options, but they're not usable because, well, we only have Spell Damage, so that's a little unfortunate, but is the way it is. As far as taking your room, just don't take Spirit Fox. The new Fox that came out, the Ingress, or whatever that thing was called, does give you more points. So you do always want to make sure you take the Fox whenever you see it. Sorry, not Spirit Fox, but the new Ingress one. Or whatever it's called. I was literally just looking at it and already forgot its name. But the new Inari. Whenever you see Inari, always take it, because only one can spawn at a time. However, aside from that, that's basically all you need to know. Always take Inari when you see it, and don't ever take Spirit Fox. And as long as you do that, you should be getting the maximum amount of points. As it doesn't seem like the battles end up getting resets. So all you have to do is just always take Inari every single time you see it, regardless of where you're at. Just always take Inari, and just never take Spirit Fox until you're forced to, because you're eventually going to be forced to. And that's pretty much all you have to do. It is a War Gear restriction. This does not leave us with too many options. However, you do have access to every weapon, so you can run Black Manigal, any AoE option. As far as some of the better ones for damage, oddly enough, Druid, back when traits were first added in 2.0, was actually kind of viable, then he fell off forever. And he's actually kind of viable again for this event if you need like a super low rarity option. Pretty good for that. Aside from that, War Gear, Wolf Garrick, double Wolf Garrick, things like that can be pretty useful. While his damage is pretty low, even with 20%, his damage is so low. But when he gets a kill, he gets a Devour on top of that. So if you have a curse option to go with that, or even if they don't have any immune to Devour, you don't even need the curse option. But you can basically just go for double kill, and win out that way. So you do have that premise as well. And that's about it, because the rest are all skull damage based, and which is kind of problematic as we don't have extra skull damage. You could theoretically try to. Obviously, we have Lord of Slaughter, I believe, in here. Where is he? Oh yeah, the Lord of Slaughter. As well as a few other things that do some skull mechanics. But the only problem with that is you do not get extra skull damage. So if you do want to run this, it will eventually fall off, because just spell damage will just be higher in comparison. So you're most likely wanting to stay mostly to like the full AoE, Black Manigal, Fiendfire, stuff like that. And if you happen to have like a Wolf Garrett cleanup or something similar. And otherwise just run a bunch of extra cast damage like off a Druid or something similar. That's pretty much all you'd have to do for your offensive build then. Anyways, let's go over all the other weeklies. So this Tuesday we're going to be getting the Hellgates faction. Wednesday we're going to be having a pet that's already been around, just the red little mastery bonus thingy. That's been around for quite some time, but if you haven't already maxed it or haven't gotten any copies of it, do make sure to pick it up. It is one that's been around for quite a while. Thursday, we have the Warren's Hero Clash, generally considered a pretty bad one. However, we will be showing a team for it. That'll actually be useful for this weekend. They'll go cover the weekend teams a little bit later. However, as far as Warren's, it's basically has one role and one role only. Or sorry, not Warren, a Warden, I mean. But as far as Warden is concerned, its main premise is the only hero class that has Green Storm combined with Dispel. This is very niche, but it's pretty good in a couple combinations. The most noteworthy one being Truffle. Truffle ends up creating, a bunch of green-brown, does a bunch of damage to all enemies, and one thing that's very convenient is having a Green Storm. You can end up making a true infinite, that just never stops, while also having Dispel. Dispel is very useful because one of the only few counters to Truffle is Submerge, and, Dispel gets rid of Submerge, so you don't even have to worry about it. And of course, he actually turns like crazy, so you will always be getting that to be able to remove it, so... yeah, that's pretty much one of its really good purposes, so it's generally a pretty bad hero class that actually has a few cases that is optimal for, oddly enough. And this Friday, we have a few things going on. One is, we're going to be getting a new faction troop. So with that, of course, we'll be going over all the teams for that and everything, just the re-summary video whenever one of those come out. But we'll be getting one of those, and it's for Fangmore. So that's a red-blue faction. And what's nice is that when Truffle build, as let's talk about with Warden, it can be used in any pure blue faction. Like, as long as blue is an option, you can end up using it. And the other thing that we're getting on Friday, of course, it's the first Friday of the month, which means we are getting a new Mythic. And the Mythic tier list video will be up before that. But it will be up before the next Mythic. But anyways, yeah, we have a new Mythic and a faction. Speaking of factions, one other thing in faction news, if you haven't already noticed, as of last Friday, the Wardens now has the new troop. So we ended up getting a new bunny for this place. Hopefully we get it first try. Of course not. Okay, we'll be here a while. But there was, of course, the new troop that was added. And you can end up finally getting it now. Of course, it never feels like it wants to drop. There it is. Then two of them. But a Limpina healer is indeed in drop table. It was added last Friday, and if you didn't end up getting it from the other event, because you wanted to save a little bit on gems, it is now available. So do make sure to pick it up if you want to go get it, as it is now available to do so without having to spend gems for it. So, yep, there it is in drop table. And we're going to be getting a new one this Friday for Fangmore. Anyways, aside from that, Soulforge. So as far as Soulforge is concerned, a couple things. Most noteworthy, Hiking Iron Gut. If you haven't gotten this, I would personally advise this is one of your first mythics, if not your very first. I would say if I was to do any mythic order from an absolute brand new account, the first thing I'd probably go for is Hiking Iron Gut. Then I would save every diamond I have for double Iron Hawk. That is probably the pathing I would go for. So basically, if it has the word iron in it, get it. But yeah, I would go one Hiking Iron Gut into double Iron Hawk in that order if I was to go from an absolute brand new account. So highly advised to get this thing. Even with a very low attack value, there's a lot of ways to offset it. For one, you get a lot of extra stats in Underworld. Another one is you can simply just 12 boost your attack with Seasons. And basically, as soon as he gets a single Devour at the later ranges of Underworld, which, you know, where you start struggling at, a single Devour will bring him to over 100 attack value. And at that point, he will devour every single time you cast them, as long as they don't have immune. And even if they have immune, you can easily run like Creeping Death or Fiendfire immune. That one that we were running with that other build. Oh, never mind, I didn't show that yet. But when we get over to teams in a second, you can end up running off of that from 250 wins on the hero class. But basically just run this with Curse and you're just good to go. You just devour everything. Once you just run it with a bunch of mana accumulation, once it gets its first Devour, it'll have 100% Devour rate, and you just kill out everything. Normally, when you're running an earlier game, you run it in a lot safer way. Like, you run Hero with, like, Barrier Brown in first slot, and then you have, like, a Mana Accumulator, then Hiking Iron Gut, and, you know, kind of run it that way in a much safer way. Though, of course, later in the game, you can actually run it as your first slot, as it's generally bulky enough to not end up dying once you have higher stats. Earlier on, you want to make sure it keeps it alive. Just mana loop it, get his first Devour everything, you win. And it's great for killing out very high-level content pretty easily. Aside from that, we do a few other things that are kind of okay. And Furnace is just kind of an all-rounder troop. Still among one of the best all-rounders in the game. Biggest issue with it is it doesn't really excel at anything other than being a really good burner. It's normally outpaced by Zolgoth in many situations in the current state of game, which has almost completely invalidated it single-handedly. However, it is still an overall just really well-rounded mythic that just covers pretty much every basis you would ever need, as it has mana accumulation into itself, it has Storm into itself, it has splash damage to bypass Submerge, and Barrier as one of the best burns in the game. It just has a lot of coverage for pretty decent mana costs. Anyways, other than that, there was one other one, Flaming Ani. While I'm personally not a fan of mana accumulation mythics, this is one of a few extra turn ones. It's also, oddly enough, speaking of burn, a pretty good way to apply 4 times burn to the opposing team, though it can also backfire and slightly burn yourself. But basically, it's just an extra turn mana accumulator. I personally prefer the likes of things like Mistralis comparatively. Like, I would use Mistralis like 9 out of 10 compared to using Flaming Ani. However, it's still situationally good depending on what your team is, especially if you're using a very extra turn heavy build that also wants the enemy to be burned for whatever reason. Maybe you're using like a triple damage skull up front, but you still want to like extra turn spam, so you can kind of go down that route. It's a very situational option, but it does have a mechanic kind of like that one that we're getting at the end of this season, where at every single start of its turn, it does get to convert 2 into a certain gem, in this case, the Burning Gem, which of course is the way that you get to 4 times burning onto the opposing team then. So, situational, but similar to many goblins, they're all viable. There's no such thing as an unviable goblin, pretty much. As far as weapons, nothing really too noteworthy, just mostly just knick-knack stuff. However, do keep in mind, I believe this is the first time you can get Vampiric Mark. Do not get it. The reason for this is, I believe the warband for this thing is just laying around, so if that is the case, just get the warband. Obviously, you might not have all the war coins for it at this exact moment in time, but you get them off your 2 to 3 offers every single day. You can get some more in arena. Sometimes you can get randomly from the daily system, the adventure board. Occasionally, they end up getting some. But basically, it's better to get this through warbands than it is to spend a little bit of resources. As I believe this one is still available from one of the 5 warbands we currently have. There's 9 total, but 5 of them are only available at any given time. So there are 4 of them where the weapon is technically a little bit hard to get. And I don't believe this is one of them. I believe this is one of the newer ones that just came out pretty recently as far as those weapons are concerned. But anyways, yeah, it's just knick-knack stuff. Nothing particularly useful here. I guess maybe Hope's Crescent, but I don't know. It's so situational that you basically would never need it compared to the other armor tier weapons. So it's pretty skippable unless you're just looking for some completionist weapons to kind of get your to get your Grimwoods to a higher star level, as it could pretty consistently hit 26 star, and I wouldn't really advise going any higher than that. Anyways, with that all being said, let's go for a couple teams. So of course, Spirit Fox Gems, this was not meant to be an actual team, it was just to show the mechanic and compare it to Spirit Fox, which used to be the other troop that kind of did that mechanic, but now the new one does it better. Anyways, so the first real team. This one's for the Word event. This one actually uses, oddly enough, Totem Golem. Mostly just have a tank there, so hero doesn't have to be first. But the main premise is we're using Fiendfire. It's 4 times Curse. You get this from 250 wins on the Blighted Alliance hero class, which is Diabolist? Yeah, Diabolist. That sounds correct. But you get it after 250 wins on that. Spirit Dancer's here just to get a bunch of green mana. Also just backup summon if you need, but you're mostly doing it for the greens. And of course, Wolf Garrick, even with 20%, barely does any damage. But his main premise is, if he gets a kill, he basically double kills as long as you don't have immune to Devour, as he'll not only kill what he targets, but also get to Devour onto a random enemy, meaning in premise, you can just double kill. Ubistet is a much better version of what Wolf Garrick does. However, if nothing else, Wolf Garrick does gain all those stats, so it's going to be pretty hard to lose with that many stats once you end up getting them. We do have a curse here just to make sure that we do guarantee get those Devours. However, there are other alternatives. For example, just run Black Manacle. If you're looking for a lower rarity team, you can literally just have a 20% chance every single time, rather than having to worry about getting into kill range. Just have one potentially get every single cast you do. And what's nice about this is you're putting into hero, so you can easily do a Barrier on Brown hero class that will keep being very tanky, have a bunch of reduction off of things like Entangle, and it just never die. And then we have Scurvy Sea Dog here. This is mostly just to get some greens for Druid, and Druid just do a little bit of damage. Used to be pretty good back in the day, like way back in the day, then they fell off forever, but hey, at least they're usable for this event again. One noteworthy thing about them is they have 50% mana start, which back then, there wasn't like a thing such as every single thing of its type getting 50% mana start. So things that actually had fast were a lot more relevant. And of course, it also has a border link to itself, so anything that has a bunch of mana start with a link into itself, always pretty useful. This allows you to get a little bit quicker. His damage is nothing particularly special these days, but it's one of the better options we do have, because there's no AoE, oddly enough, in Mergrim Woods. You have to basically run a weapon to end up doing such a thing. Luckily, you do have access to every weapon in the game, so it's very flexible what you can run there. But Black Manacle is probably going to be your way most of the time, just because of the Devour rate, as well as just having a very consistent damage to mana cost ratio. Anyways, as far as the faction, we have Hellgate. Hellgate is a brown-red faction, though of course you're allowed to use any colored weapon. This one's basically just any mana accumulation weapon in first slot with Guard's Avatar, Sir Quan Hadley. We have the Gimlet here just to try to get a little bit of mana. That's not really too required, as we could just swipe it at the beginning of a turn, get Guard's Avatar up, and it's basically just a Rowain build with Guard's Avatar, using that as the armor boost ratio. Next, we have a pretty standard High King Iron Zolgoth team. A little bit of a safer positioning of it. Like, this is probably how more so you would use it if you are a newer player who just got High King Iron Gut. But the main difference being you probably don't have Zolgoth yet. You might want to replace that out for something else. Who knows, maybe even a second High King Iron Gut now. But you might want to replace that out for, just some other utility option. Even a Damage Source if you have. Like, if you happen to have something else that might be able to do, like, a Devour, Insta-Kill, or something similar. And, of course, if you have Zolgoth, just simply run Zolgoth and High King Iron Gut Zolgoth combo. Always great to have. As far as Pure Faction is concerned, basically you just want to run 4 Judges of the Dead. Obviously this one's not 4 Judges of the Dead. This is mostly just to give a little bit of a soul bonus. Biggest issue with him is there's no skull reduction troop in this faction, so he doesn't always make it to the final battle. If you really, really want to make sure he does, you could double up on him and then go double him, double Judges of the Dead. You can do it either way, and that way you go into the final battle with 1 Sharanos and 2 Judges of the Dead, or at least ideally. You could even position your team like this if you so choose, in order to make it a little bit more likely. However, either way, with 1 Charanos with 2 Judges of the Dead, or simply 3 Judges of the Dead, both should be good enough to end up winning out the final battle. Basically, Judges of the Dead deals damage to all enemies, boosted by souls. He gains a bunch of different additional souls every single time he ends up casting his ability. And one nice thing about this is it does increase the cap Normally your cap would be 40 souls, and with a 50% increase that is 60. So that gives them a little bit more damage boost ratio. This isn't too big a deal, but that is still an additional, 10 damage. So, that adds up as far as how much extra damage you can end up getting from it. Plus it ends up boost ratioing every single bit of souls that you are getting just passively through that. So you're basically getting like 4 every single time instead of 3. So that's kind of convenient. Overall, you're basically it's just an AoE spam faction. Your main goal is just to keep spamming AoE until you win, and just one of those kind of factions. Anyways, as far as Warden class event, I didn't change his team. Well, let me go change it real quick. So, of course, if you ever want to know what you need for a Thursday event, it's actually pretty easy to do. First, identify the hero class. Of course, we're having a Warden event, so we can simply go over here. Next, check what the class info is. We can see it is Beast and Mergrim Woods. Now, all we have to do is make sure every single thing on our team is a Beast from Mergrim Woods. And to do that, we're actually already under this category. However, there's one additional thing we will need. I will need Beast. So it shows only the Beasts from Mergrim Woods. Now, we basically just find any mana link. We can just type in a word like link. And then boom. What do you have? Brown? Brown. Yeah, brown. All right, well, there we go. We have our team. Of course, you could go a little bit more diversity. Do we have a good empower to go into that? Probably not. Well, we have the new one if we want to do it into blue. But I'd rather do it down this route. So yeah, we can just do this. Black Manacle. Banner is actually already correct, oddly enough. That's fine. +2 purple, +1 brown. And class is also correct, Archmages. So there we go. That's all we have to do. Of course, you could go down the Empower route. You go for a little bit more damage. You could even go triple Spirit Fox if you want. There's options like that. But this is basically just spam AoE weapon until you win kind of build. But there are other options you can go down. Empower into the blue if you want to go like Dawnbringer. Spirit Fox triple into just a damaging weapon. Also pretty good. But either way you want to do it will end up being a perfectly solid option. And one very last one, of course, we have the good old Forest Troll Truffle with Doomed Glaive. So this is the infinite loop thing, as well as one that we'll be mentioning for next weekend. So let's go and, let's just find like Explore 12 somewheres. I don't know, how about, sure, Golvania. Just don't have any annoying mechanics for us today, Golvania. But anyways, let's go in here. So this is the infinite loop Truffle team. As one of the main reasons why you would even use Warden, given that's the hero class week, might as well end up mentioning it. It's also relevant for the faction this weekend, as it is a blue-red faction. And as long as you have access to blue, you are able to do this. So once this team gets going, it is an actual infinite loop. Like, it quite literally never stops. You'll know the exact moment when it has gone started, and it is now started. We essentially have a infinite loop now that will never end pretty much under any circumstance unless we misclick. It's just perfectly consistent, and it just never stops, as long as you have Greenstorm to go with it, and that's the whole premise. We have Dispel off the Warden, so we make sure we guarantee we'll end up getting it out. This weapon here is literally only to speed up the battle. It is not actually needed, but it's like a big damage burst, so you can end up doing that, get an alignment on Brown to Skull, and then, end up getting extra turn. Obviously, we didn't have alignment there. But, it does a slightly more damage than the other one, so you can kind of, like, speed up the battle just ever so slightly. It also is a good way to punish if they end up reviving. Like, if they do a 25% revive, like, from a Dragon Egg or something similar, it's a good way to clean it up because you'll just get a bunch of Doomskull damage on them. And overall, just a really good faction team. I generally don't run it too often, as if you have access to, like, Iron Gut Zulgoth, it's normally quicker to run Iron Gut Zulgoth than it is an infinite loop. However, it is one of the only few like true infinite loops that like literally never ends, unless you're frozen, obviously. But as long as you're not frozen, it just like literally never ends if you have the storm setup with it, which you have for the first 4 turns. So as long as you get the team started within the first 4 turns and they don't storm counter you, you're pretty much good to go. But anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for now. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. All the teams mentioned will also be down there, as well as in the description if you want to go and copy paste any of them. But yeah, anyways, tonight we'll be going over a couple things at our normal time, 8 p.m. Standard Time, as we do every single night at this channel. I'll also be messing around with the campaign task, as well as doing some Guild War prep, as we are Paragon this week, so we'll get to get some good data on some defend teams. And I do plan on revamping these slightly, especially now that we have a double empower counter. So who knows, maybe we're going to scrap every double empower. I highly doubt it. Even with a double empower counter, plus it only works on yellow and purple day, so those might be the 2 days we want to rework. Though guess what? We're already prepared, because you know what counters it? Boom, Bless. Bless counters mana drain. Impervious counters mana drain. So, yeah, that team almost already has everything it needs. Actually, even this has immune to mana drain. Oh, that's funny. Everything except Lamistu. Maybe I guess we replace that out for something. Oh, that's really funny. Well, one team's already ready. Though we will probably have to revamp the purple one, as that one does not have a counter to the new Empower that just came out today, and the new Power Gem. But I don't know, it'll be interesting to see. I'm really curious to see how this new Power Gem works out overall for Guild Wars. as it seems like the main goal it has is to stop double and triple empower. Will that work? We'll find out. In a team like this, I don't think it's going to have any effect. However, in all fairness, this is not a double empower team. It's barely even a single empower team. So that's not the thing it's really trying to counter, but I don't know. We'll see over time if it does. Obviously, we only have one option, so this Guild War might not be a good indicator on if that power gem actually does counter it properly. But if nothing else, the next Guild War in 4 weeks might be a slightly better indicator, as we'll have a lot more options by then, or even in like 2 or 3 Guild Wars from now, we'll have a lot more options that have the gem available. And at that point, I don't know, we'll just have to wait and see. Well, at least this will be a nice taste to see exactly what it could do, though it's only on yellow and purple day, technically, as far as currently. But, of course, we'll be getting plenty more options that have the new Spirit Gem over the course of the season. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone.